Hello, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Montgomery County Public Schools has put off the search for a new superintendent until the next school year comes around. Fred Evans, who comments on this program on a regular basis, has some thoughts about what the school board, or what the Board of Education, should be looking for in the new superintendent. The state's attorney's office has, as part of its mandate, responsibility to protect people throughout our community. Brian Roslin, a specialist in crime against seniors in the Special Prosecution Division, is here to explain what his office does, what he does personally in this. Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce has followed very closely the energy tax as it makes its way through the FY16 budget discussions, and these discussions come to a close. Ilya Hopkins from the Chamber is here to explain the importance of this energy tax to business and also to tell us what has transpired. Montgomery County Public Libraries have received money, thank goodness, to support additional hours and increased books and materials for its collections as part of the allocation in the new budget. Ari Brooks, Executive Director of the Friends of the Library, important, Friends of the Library is not a part of the Montgomery County Public Library system. It supports our libraries. She's here. She has all the details. Fred, I think, what goes around comes around, whatever. We've got all this superintendent stuff, but I think before we talk about what goes on in the future, we had some sad news about the past.
It's been a very interesting scenario these last few months. Before I get into that, I wouldn't want to make a memorial statement, I guess is the best way to put it, to Dr. Paul Vance, who sadly just recently passed away. He was superintendent of schools in Montgomery County from 1991 to 1999. And he served in other positions in the system and had a long special education career. And I just wanted to recognize him. He was here for 8 years as superintendent.
I think one of the interesting things, and because we got to get on the other things, but for Superintendent Vance, when he went on to other jobs and continued on, but one of his lasting legacies are these Vance scholarships. That helping kids in Montgomery County, poor kids, going to Montgomery College, being able to live their dreams. That's through that effort that he spearheaded. He did
a great job.
Hundreds of
I
kids.
was a principal when he was superintendent, and we didn't always agree.
No,
but that's what I liked about him. You could have an open discussion, which moves right into to our main topic today.
So what's happened? I understood that they came out with this floating candidate.
Preferred candidate,
and then all heck broke loose.
I don't know about all heck breaking loose, but yeah, there was some discussion. The person that was designated as the preferred candidate after the process took place was Dr. Houlihan from Houston Public Schools. And when it was discovered that, first of all, he's 36 years old, no prejudice regarding age or anything, and that he had served as a principal for 2 years and had risen very quickly in the
meteoric rise.
A meteoric rise. There was significant pushback, and I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but within about a week or so, once his name was floated out there, he then withdrew from the superintendency, and the school board made a decision this past Wednesday to extend the interim position of Mr. Larry Bowers, who has been in the system for 37 years. He was the chief, I think this is the appropriate title, chief financial officer, and then he acted as interim just recently after Dr. Starr left.
Ready to retire, Larry Bowers.
He was going to retire this June 30th, and he will stay on for another year. I think it's been a very interesting process, and I don't think the community was involved enough in the process. I think that's one criticism. And to bring out a preferred candidate, what does that mean exactly?
Having been in the school system and in leadership positions that you were in, what kinds of criteria do you think are important for a candidate?
Well, I have a specific view on that, and that is someone who has been, quote, through the system. And I don't necessarily mean in terms of long years, but in terms of experiences. I want someone who's a superintendent, who was a teacher. That's me. And then maybe rose through becoming a principal, and then typically a central office administrator, but someone who understands the workings of what goes on day to day in a school.
The question, one of the questions in this thing was, it was that he didn't have any superintendent experience, and in a place like Montgomery County, complexity and all that, isn't that something that's important?
Oh, I think that's important, but I think administrative experience, even below the level of superintendent in a large system would suffice. But
So why the reason to postpone the search? Is that because of the criticism?
I
the
think,
lack of
yeah, that's a great
involvement, or-
question. I think the reason they postponed is because whoever the other candidates were, I'm sure, stepped back or stepped out, and it would have been a scramble to do it by July 1, because that was when the new person has to come in.
But the process of floating a candidate out there as a preferred candidate, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to that. I think and there's some arguments to say, rather than declaring this is the one
Right.
and then have it fall apart, I think there could be some positives by floating a name rather than...
I think something
Maybe.
that has to be looked at too is that's not high on the radar screen. The search firm that we've hired.
I was going to ask about that.
The search firm that the school system has hired, and I believe this figure is correct. I read it. I think I read it. $35,000 to search for a new superintendent. Has chosen the last 3 superintendents: Jerry Wiest, Joshua Starr, and now this next one.
Preferred,
So, what criteria are they using? Where are they getting their information? And all those things has to be, I think, although this word is overused, more transparent.
We've got about 30 seconds left or so. Where do you see this going from here? Larry Bowers is not known as an education intellectual. He keeps the trains running.
That's right, and I think that's what will happen over the next year. I think he'll move forward. He knows the system well enough to be able to move forward. He knows the players, so to speak. So I don't think things will necessarily slow down, but it'll be a year of wait and see.
Okay. Well, we'll wait and see. You come back, and Fred Evans, always a pleasure to have you on here.
Good to be here.
Thanks. Brian, welcome. This is your first time.
It is on the first time with you on this show, so...
Well, John
glad to be
McCarthy, please give him our regards. We're big fans.
Great.
You've been through several state's attorneys as your boss.
Yes, a few. I've been there 20 years now, so I've had
That's
the
fantastic.
pleasure of being hired by Andy Sonner and then working for Bob Dean and Doug Gansler since then. And when Mr. McCarthy came in, he saw fit to put me in charge of special prosecutions, which deals with money and everything else.
All right, so when we're talking about elder abuse, and this is so important, and thank goodness you're here. Elder abuse is the physical abuse, but it's also the emotional and money,
Right.
and folks who are trusting. So maybe can you fill us in a little bit about what this is? What is
Right.
elder abuse?
One of the big themes with elder abuse and why our office is focused on it, why we've created a special unit called the Crimes Against Seniors and Vulnerable Adults, is to raise awareness of all the different facets. And you touched upon, when you hear of elder abuse, people think about, oh, the nurse beat up the person in the nursing home. That's part of it. But you also mentioned the psychological abuse that goes on, neglect, which happens oftentimes in people's own homes with their own families that are, for whatever reasons, not providing the care for them. And then a large component is the financial abuse that happens both from what we call trusted people, the caregivers and attorneys that they know of.
And relatives.
And relatives absolutely is a big source of that. But then the unknown, the scams that come in through the internet and come through the mail and
Let
the
me
telephone.
stop you here. There's a phone number for people who are interested in this or have to report. What is that phone number?
Make sure I remember it, 240-773-0444, and that's to our Crimes Against Seniors and Vulnerable Adults. We created a new unit within our office combining people from my team, which deal with the financial side of it, and then from Debbie Feinstein's team, which deals with family abuse. Those are the specialists in physical abuse. We now have 2 designated attorneys that work with us on these, and we've hired a program manager to deal with the cases as they come in, but also to work with our other partners.
How much does technology impact the amount that's happening? I'm thinking, in political seasons we get robocalls.
Sure.
And you can troll for things on the internet. Are seniors particularly vulnerable to some of those technologies?
Absolutely, and part of what it is most seniors are raised to be polite, to be nice, and to talk with people. So the idea of hanging up or disengaging is not natural to them, and that makes you an easy target, because the main people that are talking, that pursue in those kind of scams are just your standard con artists. They'll start talking, get the conversation going, gain your trust, and work their way
So
out.
we really need to work to make seniors less trusting,
Yes.
make them abuse, I mean, ready to come back? I mean, show some Seinfeld episodes maybe. You know, can I have your number, please? You're disturbing.
Right.
I want to call you back.
Yes.
You know,
when can I reach you?
When
best
can I reach
to
you?
interrupt
Exactly.
Your family hours.
Exactly.
But to switch that mentality for so many of our seniors is very hard. Part of our overall message is we want to get seniors talking with each other, talking with their kids, talking with their families, because that's how we all learn about these things. So the one scam that came through Montgomery County, as a bunch of other places earlier this year, was you're going to be arrested unless you pay such and such amount of money because you didn't show up for jury duty. You were supposed to have been at the courthouse, and you must wire this money now. Well, if you talk to your 3 neighbors and everybody got that call, somebody's going to say, oh, wait a minute, none of us got a summons for jury duty.
Right.
So that raising the awareness and the knowledge is one of the big things to do with
There
it.
is a lot of training on technology for seniors at libraries on how to use Facebook so that they can talk with their grandchildren and see photos of them. And I'm just thinking, I wonder if that should be a component of the training, is the scams that are out
Sure,
there.
and raising the internet safety awareness,
Yeah.
the same types of things that are done with the kids in the schools
Right.
to
Right.
acquaint them with it. But that's definitely part of it. But the raising the awareness in every way we can is part of why our office is here. Part of why we have a program manager whose job is not just to manage the cases that are coming in, but to get our message out in the community that, hey, this is a problem.
Isn't it amazing when you look at the financial side? When someone passes away and you watch the brothers and sisters and cousins all fight over the money of the parent, and parent hates, I mean, living would hate that. I can only imagine. I mean, how do you deal with that? It only takes 1 or 2 in a big brood to turn everybody in, and especially if the person is passing. Can I get your signature on this?
Sure. The early inheritances is what we often call those, where somebody within the family says, "I'm going to get the house and get it titled in my name." Before
they pass.
Yes.
And every family seems to. I mean, most families have somebody who fits that profile. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, but it's very difficult because why that is there is something that is in that family's history from long ago. And we as prosecutors, we can deal with the immediate crime of somebody forging a signature, but it's hard to fix all those family dynamics. So it is a complicated issue, and that's part of why raising the awareness that criminal prosecution isn't always the best thing to do, because sometimes it's the social worker or the counselor or the book out of the library to read about how to interact better with each other is a better solution.
Brian, this is so helpful. Thank you for being here. I hope you'll come back
to be here.
multiple times
Sure,
in the future.
there's a lot to talk on it.
We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Lily Hopkins, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's always great when you're on the show.
Glad to be here.
So we're talking about the ever controversial with the chambers energy tax. That tax that came in for a very short period of time, that's been with us for a long period of time.
Well, it would not be a controversy if promises made were promises that were kept. And I have to go back in time a little bit to make sure we're talking about the right thing. But in 2010, when we were really having a very difficult financial situation as the county executive was developing the budget, an emergency solution was proposed, which was to increase the fuel energy tax on the distribution of energy by 100%. And the agreement was that that would be done to plug a gap in the budget for 2 years. And when the budget was passed in FY11, it was passed with the agreement that that increase of 100% would sunset in 2 years. Well, FY13 budget came around and the county executive chose not to sunset it. Council members at the time did work to reduce it by 10%, as they did then again in FY14 and 7% in FY15. Once again in FY16, the county executive proposed continuing this increase in the energy tax, which, by the way, burdens businesses 20 times more than residential consumers. And the council debated it. It is a very contentious issue among the council members, and ultimately on a vote of 5-4 chose to maintain this increase at FY15 levels.
Okay.
How much What were we talking about in dollars and cents?
$100 million. It is now the
Total.
third highest source of tax-generated revenue.
In Montgomery, just
in
within
Montgomery County. And our contention is that this is a really unsustainable way to fund an operating budget. This is money that goes into the general fund. There are other jurisdictions, and everybody has an energy tax. Again, we're talking the 100% increase that started in 2010. Other jurisdictions use their energy tax to funnel it into conservation efforts, retrofitting old buildings to get them to be more energy efficient. This money is tax-generated revenue that goes to fund the general fund. And our chamber believes in funding the best schools, the best transportation, libraries, all of that. But we are on a dangerous course if we become dependent on this source of revenue as opposed to growing our tax base.
So are you saying that in 2012, after it was supposed to be sunset, there was a decrease in the tax, but now there has been an increase in the tax?
No, that's a good point. It was the council members in that budget deliberation reduced it by 10%, about $10 million. And each year it's been chipped away at a little bit. But from where we started in 2010, it still is a net increase of almost $100 million.
So net increase, so if you were to cut it back, so getting to Fred's question, following up, if it were where it was
in 2010
and in today's, how much are we talking about? Would that be about $100 million?
$100 million.
And then, so then we're talking about an additional, what, $70, $80 million now with it being chipped away a little bit with the percentages?
Yeah, it's a very complicated formula, and it really is the way it's a little bit reverse engineered to figure out what the deficit is and how they need to reach it. But we do know that the businesses are charged at a higher rate than residential consumers, and many of our members have gone to great lengths to implement conservation measures. It's good for their bottom line, and yet they're still paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in the year. For a big business, they absorb it. For small business, it's few $100s a month, which is really a big hit.
So what is the chamber suggesting as other alternatives, particularly in light of the recent Supreme Court decision that's going to cut out the state's or the county's ability to piggyback tax on income earned out of the state? What are the alternatives to the energy tax?
Right. Well, we are excited about ideas around economic development. That's a whole nother topic for another day, but really it's growing the tax base, increasing the amount of economic activity that's happening within our county for more businesses to be successful, to be able to have more capital to fund the improvements and the growth, to be able to hire more people. We need some more business-friendly, business-inducing activity to grow the tax base.
And that's a long-term thing. I'm looking for.
How are you going to plug the hole?
Yeah.
Because now it's developed a thing. And,
right. Well, the council in their reconciliation list chose to fund many projects that is on that list, and the county budget from 2010 to today has grown by $800 million. Right. So the county is making choices on how to spend money, and they're using this increased energy tax revenue to continue to not make those hard choices.
Okay. Ilya, unfortunately, our time is up. We can talk about
go
this for a long
on
time.
on.
Having somebody with such great knowledge about this, thank you very much, and look forward to having you come back.
Thank you.
Well, Ari Brooks.
Speaking of the reconciliation list.
Yes, and we're not going to say, I mean, I don't know how much of that extra energy tax is coming in and helping to ensure that the libraries can be with us. But it's such welcome news, as we had in the lead, that there is some extra money now to help with hours and collections. But maybe if you could just start off, Friends of the Library and its relationship with Montgomery County Public Libraries.
Sure. We're a nonprofit organization that's independently governed by a board of trustees. And our mission is to support and champion public libraries. So we're not a part of county government, and we're fiscally separate from them. But what we do is help to make sure that the awareness of them is raised, and we advocate on behalf of public libraries. So the great news is I get to come on this show and not be Debbie Downer and say libraries have been cut. This time, actually, for the past couple of years, I've been able to say that they have experienced an increase in their budget by 7.1% as of today. The budget passed. So that's exciting news. So some branches, about 5, will actually be their hours will be increased to pre-recession hours.
Okay.
So there were some library branches where if you drove up to them on a Wednesday morning, they wouldn't open until about 1 o'clock.
Sure.
And speaking of seniors who actually do a lot of their activities during the day, from going to the grocery store to going to the libraries, that's really critical to be able to have those hours for them and families who visit libraries during the day.
So you're happy now, but how now to make it sustainable? How to ensure that we don't get to that same kind of, well, budget cuts we have to make, recession, libraries. It seems to be every cycle. It seems the libraries are in the target zone. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen?
They have been, and that's a question for the county council and the county government, Mr. Leggett. I mean, that's the one thing we went in with, saying that we really want the budget to be sustainable, because when people go to the library one year and they can, access them, at 10 a.m. and the next year they can't access them until 1 p.m., it's really difficult for the community.
And people can access you, but there's a phone number that can access you.
Yes,
right?
if people want to support public libraries, my number is 240-777-0020. Okay. And the book budget also did get increased, thankfully, because the budget for books was decimated about 6 years ago.
Right.
It went from about a $6 million to almost a $3 million budget, and so that will experience some increases, and the Spanish collection will
If we
also.
have time, I know that there are a lot of questions for you. I'd love to know who decides which books come in. But.
Well, question I have, are libraries 20 years from now, who knows what it'll be like, but are books going to go out of fashion?
Well,
ever?
you're asking a book lover.
And I'm a book
question.
lover. Yeah.
And personally, no, I don't think they will. I think that studies are showing now that people who read ebooks still prefer to read what we call P-books. They read both of them.
Gotcha.
I mean, I curl up in bed with my daughters at night to my iPad, and we might read Laura Ingalls Wilder. But then some nights we also pull out the paper books, and kids are doing both. And
You mean you don't read Cat in the Hat? Or?
well, they're a little older now, but we do read that sometimes.
I still read it.
I'm teasing.
But studies are even showing, Pew did a study recently that showed that college-age students actually prefer paper books because they can retain the information better. There's not all of the bells and whistles on the electronic devices that interrupt them, so they don't start shopping on Amazon while they're trying to read, and they can take notes. And so I don't think paper books are going to die, personally, not based on what the studies are showing. And we operate 2 used bookstores, and our sales are soaring right now.
Right.
This is a very literate and a very reading community, and so people are still coming to us to buy used books because we still undercut Amazon.
We've got about a minute, so I know that some other questions coming in.
What I had was on the collections thing, is that apply to the books on tape. That's what my in-laws, every place they drive as seniors, they listen to those, and so that's happy news for them to increase that part of it, and then certainly an access that seniors use on that part of it.
Yes,
So that's good.
collections is a broad term for even all the
Covers all those
databases, the
things.
magazines,
Okay, good.
yeah.
And it's happy news that the libraries got restored because they were really cut in 2010.
Yes.
And so we're working our way back. But again, I think the key is how do we sustain it going forward?
And one of the things I hear from Ilya right here is that there's a chance for you to meet with Ilya and the Chamber about building up a stronger relationship, because just as with good schools, good roads, and everything else, a good library helps make Montgomery County even more attractive to businesses. So I see a beautiful relationship coming out of this show right here. This is
Designated
fantastic.
from the energy tax.
There you go.
Exactly. Well, listen, this is where we are, and Ari, I wish we could just keep talking. And with all of you, I want to thank you. What a delightful show this has been. I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Moores. Please join us next week at this very same time.